Hello, everybody. Can you believe it's already May? Wow. Where'd April go? Where'd half of March go? But here we are. It's May. They say April showers bring May flowers. May flowers bring June bugs. I added that part. Tonight, I want us to look at something a little bit different out of the Gospel of John, the 21st chapter. I'm just going to read a couple of verses. John chapter 21, verse 20. Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. Most people believe Scripture kind of teaches us this, and scholars as well, that this was John. This was the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, "Lord, who is going to betray you?" When Peter saw him, he asked, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus answered, "If I want him to remain until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me." That's a harsh passage for Peter, anyway. You see, we have a human nature to compare ourselves to other people. It's a tough thing. Hard to get rid of it. We're not supposed to do this, but we do it. I heard someone say the other day, "I'm not going to wear a mask because so-and-so's not wearing a mask." I also heard a guy say one time, "Well, I thought it was okay to hunt here because I saw so-and-so hunting here." He got a ticket for trespassing. Heard recently about a couple of guys, they even opened the gate and drove in. The fines were humongous. If the law says don't do it and you say, "Well, somebody else did it, I think I'll be okay," most likely you're going to be the one that gets caught. How about fishing on a pier? When I was in seminary, a buddy and I went down to the coast to fish. We drove from Raleigh down there, and the pier was closed. I don't know why it was closed. It was like 4 a.m. when we got there. My buddy said, "Well, there's other people out here. Why don't we go on out too?" Wow, because somebody else did it. Or what about this? Speeding. People say, "Well, I'm just keeping up with traffic." Well, that means you're a speeder too. Or, all of you ladies, fashion. Wow, you got to look like everybody else. How about speech? Have you noticed how idioms happen and people everywhere start saying them? Why? Because they want to be hip, I guess. An old cliche. They want to be just like everybody else and say the same things everybody else says and do the same things everybody else does. Now, my dad used to have a saying. He would say, when I would say, "Well, I want to go to this party," Daddy would say, "Well, I don't think you should go." And I would say, "Daddy, everybody else is going to be there." His favorite saying, "Son, if everybody jumped off a bridge, would you do it?" I did not like him saying that because I knew better than to do that. How about breaking the 10 Commandments? When I was at Camp McCall, one of our guys says, "Why are we doing a study on the 10 Commandments this summer? Those things are outdated. I don't have to go by them." Wow. How about this? Joining the crowd, doing what the crowd does. You see the mob mentality? Even though you may know that it's wrong, you join in because you think, well, if this many people can do it, it ought to be all right. Or I heard this one time. This was when the guy was arrested and it was on TV. He said, "Well, I didn't think they could arrest everybody." I loved that one. If everyone else is doing it, this must be okay. Boy, that stings, doesn't it? That stings. Peter was comparing himself to John. Boy, John didn't get asked that question. Peter was a little upset. You see, the questions were three. The questions were before this. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon, this is in verse 15 of chapter 21, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now, we don't know what the these was. It could have been the meal. It could have been the other disciples. It could have been anything Jesus may have just gestured towards. And Simon said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And he answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly I say to you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you don't want to go. Now that's sensitive for some of us, isn't it? Because we're older. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said, follow me. And that's where we read the first passage when Peter turned and saw that John was coming. He got upset. He said, Lord, what about him? Didn't even say his name. I know the Greek part of those words, but those aren't important for this discussion. You see, what was happening was this. Peter was embarrassed. In front of everybody, Jesus drew him out. Why was he embarrassed? Because he had denied Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed. He was embarrassed he had done it. He was embarrassed that they knew he had done it. He was embarrassed that Jesus was confronting him on it. He was hurt. He thought Jesus knew he loved him. And so it stung when Jesus asked him 3 times. You and I realize that Peter was blind to the fact that he had betrayed Jesus and he had really not dealt with it yet because he felt like this had done him in his relationship to Jesus. And by Jesus asking him those questions, he was thinking Jesus didn't think he loved him anymore. What was Jesus wanting to do? He was wanting Peter to understand something really important. Same thing he wants you and I to understand tonight. Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Peter was comparing himself to John. John was perfect. John was Jesus' favorite. Peter thought, I'm not either one of those things. I denied him, and now he really questions whether I love him. But the real point is this. You are never compared to someone else. You see, you and I have a tendency by our clothes and our actions to say we have to be like someone else. We have to be as good. We have to look like the Hollywood stars. We can't be an ounce overweight. We're too embarrassed if our hair's not done. I would dare say many of you, when they closed the hair salons, said, I'm not going out in public till they open this back up. Huh. Isn't it amazing? I'll tell you how you can get over that. Go with me overseas. Let's go to the mountains of Peru, where there's no electricity, where there's no water. And let's stay for a month. And let's see how you compare yourself then. You know what? All the pretense will be gone. And you will marvel at the fact that those people are content with very little. They don't care if they have on striped pants and a plaid shirt. It's just not that important. No. With no electricity, they have to watch TV in the dark. Jesus said, don't compare yourself to somebody else. Jesus knew Peter loved him. He wanted Peter to understand that when you start comparing yourself to someone else, you'll never think you measure up. Now, our society wants you to do that because if they can get you to do that, guess what? You'll buy their products so you can look as good as I do. You see, everybody ought to be clean shaven. Everybody ought to have thinning hair. Wow. Isn't it amazing that we will go to great lengths to fit in when Jesus said we should stand out? Your life is judged by Scripture. Your life is judged by what Jesus said is true. Your life is judged by how you treat the least of these. And as believers, you are judged with a greater strictness than anybody else. Why? Because you know the truth. Remember that passage that says, and you know the truth, and the truth shall set you free? That doesn't mean it sets you free from your responsibility to it. It sets you free to obey and to live like God has called you to live. When Jesus came, he said, I didn't come to negate the Old Testament. I came to fulfill it. The laws of the Old Testament are just as vital. Jesus said, if you want to be my disciple, you deny yourself and follow me. Now, you cannot be a little Jesus. God never wants you to be. After all, the Greek word for Jesus is monogenes, one of a kind. There'll never be another Jesus. He is unique in all of eternity. And you, here you are tonight, not a little Jesus, but you are a person God has called to follow him. That's what Jesus told Peter. What if John lives till I come back? What is that to you? And that was not a harsh term. Jesus said it in compassion. He just said to him, follow me. So no matter what the crowd does, no matter what everybody else does, you are to follow. And you won't know how to do that unless you commit yourself to study God's Word. It's not enough just for you to listen to me. It's not enough for you to watch every sermon that there is on the internet or on TV. God expects you to do some study too. After all, I had a buddy one time that said, I can only stay at a church as a pastor for 2 years because there's nothing else to preach on after 2 years. And I remember a professor saying in jest, he was like 62 or 3, he said, well, I've been preaching all my life and I barely scraped the surface. What does God want you to do? He wants you to follow him. And when you follow him, it doesn't matter what everybody else does. You see, your faithfulness to God is based on your heart totally committed to him to do as he beckons you. Now, if you say, well, I don't believe that part of Scripture, doesn't mean that part of Scripture is wrong. It means you are. If you say, well, it's okay for me to do a few things, you better search that out. And I'll tell you how you can judge that. And here's the best way that I found to do it. Say, Lord, show me my life as you see it. Lord, show me the parts of my life as you see it. Wow. So Jesus says to you tonight, doesn't matter the depth of anybody else's faith. I've called you to follow me. Wow. What a call. God bless you all tonight.